Today's guest is Rob Spector, the visionary behind Spector Co. Over 3 decades ago, Rob transformed a modest 5-person operation into a global powerhouse, serving clients from Tesla to GM. It was the first time I heard this story from the beginning and really see how he built such an amazing business. And I loved it. I learned a lot, and I think you will too. So I think we should just get into the show. As a distributor side of the business, I'm always so fascinated by the supplier side. It's such a different thing. And it's, in some ways, I think being a supplier is way more challenging than being a distributor, at least in the early days. You know, anybody could become a distributor just by having an ASI or PPI. Being a supplier, it seems somewhat overwhelming for me. So I would just love to hear the story of, number one, how you got into this business, because I'm always fascinated by how we all kind of landed here. And then how was it in the first early years? Because I'm so curious about like the early years of building this up and buying machinery, or I know I want to hear your story. I guess we could jump
Yeah,
in from there.
yeah, for sure. No, it's funny because you were talking about barriers to entry, and true, there are low barriers to entry on the distributor side and much higher on the supplier side, right? So it's easier for distributors to get involved, tougher for the suppliers to kind of start up because obviously they need equipment and inventory and whatnot. So yeah, it's two very different challenges, and I think both have different challenges in startups, right? But if you're a distributor, you probably already have networks, right? So you already have contacts. You're probably all ready to get business. But if you're a supplier and you don't have any relationships, it's tough to start relationships. So I'm happy to kind of go through a quick history of our company. So basically, I'm born and raised in Montreal. My dad was in the schmuckta business, clothing business, and retired in the mid '80s. Was looking to buy a small company, and I just done my MBA, University of New Hampshire. Came back, was working for consumer electronics, and calls me one morning while I'm at work around 11 and says, "Hey Rob, I think I found this really cute company that I'm gonna have a meeting with." I'm like, "Okay, fantastic." He's like, "I want you to attend the meeting." I'm like, "Okay, fine. Just let me know when it is." He's like, "It's in 2 hours." I'm like, I can't leave my office in the middle of the day. And anyways, arguing back and forth for, several minutes. And then I slam down the phone. I'm like, fine, whatever. I sneak out the back way in my office so no one sees me, leaving at like 1:30 p.m. I go into this meeting and I walk into this old accounting office, and the former owner of our company, Lester Fox, was sitting there, tweed jacket, very, very well dressed. And I walk in this small, tiny office. My dad's on the left, the accountant's on the right, Lester's there, and he starts talking about his company, which was known as Banker's Pen Company back, this was 1991. And he starts talking to me about the industry and the profile of the industry and his company. And something in me just clicked from kind of walking into that room with like a somewhat negative attitude. After about an hour and a half, something in me clicked. I loved him. I loved what he had to say about the industry, about his company. There were 4 employees at the time. And the meeting ends, and we're walking down this corridor, and my dad, I'm sure is expecting me to bolt. He turns to me and says, "What do you think?" I'm like, "I'm in. Let's do this." So
Wow.
this was the spring in '91. I quit my job like a month later, went to work for the company that summer. And September 26th, 1991, we closed on this tiny little company of 4 employees with a 12-page catalog, who had been established in 1950. So he was actually the second owner of the company. He was the accountant of this company when the founder died in like the mid 70s, I think.
And what were the products they were selling at that point?
Pens.
Pens. So it's only pens. So you came in, you had no knowledge about the pens industry. Obviously, you had some knowledge about the schmata apparel industry, it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, my dad did anyways.
And you come in, you have no interest in, it's like something about that meeting or that person or the story or maybe the feeling he had talking about and the pride he had in this business got you
Yes.
excited, and that triggered something in you.
Big time. It triggered something in me that I don't think ever was actually triggered. Like I was a marketing manager at the time, and I was enjoying my time there, but nothing really resonated with me the way that meeting did. And I'm like, yes, this is something that I think I can dig into and do well with. And I was 26 years old at the time, so I didn't really know much. I'm like, yeah, this sounds great.
And did you have an idea of buying this company and building it and selling it, or did you think this could be my life, or do you know anything at that point?
No long-term perspective whatsoever. Um, and it's funny because, I came in and the 4 employees had been there for 8, 10, 12, 15 years. And 3 of the 4 employees are actually still with us. So some
Wow.
celebrate their 45th anniversary, their 50th anniversary. So 2 women basically printed pens in the morning, they have lunch, and they go ship in the afternoon. And the 2 women in the office, Janice and Betty, basically took calls and entered orders and invoiced. So
It's unbelievable.
it was crazy. And I just came in and, I walk in, this 26-year-old, and Lester at the time was like 75. And they're like, oh my God, what is this kid doing here? So I walk in and, say hi, introduce myself, whatever. And I say to them, like, listen, I think you guys have been doing really well. I think this is something that we can build upon. And I went out I remember my first client was a company called Commercial Marketing in Toronto. And I visited his office and I'm like, hey, Victor, Rob Spector, just bought this small company. I'd love to, work with you guys, and I love you can kind of help me along and kind of, show me what's important to you, how I can help you. I just bought it. I really don't know much about the business or the industry. And he's like, yeah, you know what? Let me think for a second. He thinks for a second. And back in these days, the orders were delivered in 3, 4, 5 weeks, 2 days. And he comes back, and I think he met with a couple people. He comes back. He's like, you know what, Rob? If you guys can deliver in 2 or 3 weeks, we can do something with you. So I'm like, okay, that would be great. Where's your phone? Go down the corridor, turn right. The phone. I go down the corridor, turn right. I call Janice. I'm like, hey, Janice, I'm just with Victor Arlett from Commercial Marketing. He's asking if we can ship his orders in 2 and 3 weeks instead of 3 and 4 and 5 weeks. She's like, yeah, like we can do that. I go back. I'm like, apparently we can do that. And literally for the next several years, I used that to my advantage because a lot of the distributor owners and distributor salespeople love to talk, right? And I'm like, hey, I'm a kid. I'm here to learn. Teach me. Show me. What are your pain points? And I've kind of used that same tactic for the last 33 years, give or take. Although, granted, I don't admit to not knowing about the industry or the company, but I kind of walk in and I don't really bring product. And I'm like, hey, what's going on in your life? What's going on in your company? How can I help you? And I think around 10 years ago, I was actually in a distributor's office, and this was kind of when delivery started to become rather quicker, 3, 4 days. And this distributor says to me, who was already a top 10 distributor of ours, already doing quite well. And she says to me, she's like, you know what? If you can deliver our orders in 48 hours, that would be huge. It would double our business. I'm like, okay. I go back to the office. I call the management team in. This time I had a management team that I can actually speak to. I'm like, hey guys, this distributor wants us to ship our orders in 48 hours. And they're like, oh my God, no. And I'm like, take some time, think about it. I'll give you guys a week or so. Come back to me to let me know A, if we can do it, and B, how we can do it. Came back to me a week later. I reached out to the distributor and I'm like, okay, you know what? This is what we need, complete order, full artwork, whatever. And we start to do this 48-hour service with this distributor. And Janice, the same Janice, comes back to me maybe 2 months after we launch a service. And she's like, Rob, can we do more of these rush orders? I'm like, literally, you were like in tears the last time we talked about this. Like, no, it's amazing. They actually sent us a complete order and I love it. It's no back and forth, no artwork, no whatever. So she's like, if you can get more of this business, that would be awesome.
So this was 10 years ago. This shift happened from like the 2 to 3
Maybe
week to like the
maybe
2
maybe
days.
maybe 10, 12 years ago. Yeah.
It's crazy because I mean, you've been around for a while in this industry. It seems like, what, 30 years at this point?
33 years, yeah.
33 years. So you've had a lot of, I mean, things have changed. I assume things have changed a lot. I'm just even hearing it. It's changed from 5 weeks to 3 weeks to 2 days, the process. Even just that you were describing your initial meeting where you had to go down the hallway for a phone call, and now obviously everyone has cell phones. So things,
Yeah.
materially changed. Has that been, like, exciting for you guys? Like, I know, like, if you're in it, is it exciting? Is it nervous? Technology changing could be both. Like, we're at a crossroads right now with AI. I don't even like, I'm not even in the industry, technically at this point, and I'm, like,
Right.
excited and nervous about the opportunities and the potential.
It's funny. I've always had this ingrained sense of welcoming conflict, welcoming newness, welcoming challenges, and I think I'm good to say that almost every day of those 33 years, I've loved what I've been doing. It's been an adventure. It's been highs and lows. We built a great team at Spector and Co. People have been with us for decades, and it's been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I love seeing the changes from fax orders, back then, artwork being couriered or mailed to, what's happening now. So it's been a lot of fun.
So I'm just curious, when you were starting out in this business, was the model the same where you're selling to promo distributors, or in the early days were you just going directly and selling to companies?
No, we never sold directly. It was always through promotional parts distributors.
Okay, so was it the same organizations? Like, was PPAI and ASI set up at that point?
Yeah, ASI. Not sure when ASI was created, but we had PPAI and then PPPC. So we had the two industry organizations, not for profit. I think ASI was around, but yeah, they were around, and we had trade shows, and it was very similar.
And was it as big? I know, like, when I go to Vegas, the shows are so overwhelming, so many people, so many suppliers, so many distributors. Did it have that same feel back then as well?
Yeah, very much so.
Wow.
It was in Dallas for many years, and yeah, it was always the Super Bowl of the promotional products industry.
Wow. So, okay, so this industry has been around for so long. I'm so fascinated by it because I come from a very specific position of being a former promo distributor. And I was never truly in the industry. Like, I would never go to the trade shows or the events. And I do
Yeah,
regret that now looking back. I wish I did more of those things early on, but I was very outside of the industry. Um, Being in the industry, I could just imagine you're a supplier and there's thousands of suppliers. How did you cut through the noise? Like, how do you what was the strategy to get promo distributors to want to work with you?
yes. So that was a huge challenge, and this is where my dad's merchandising experience came into play, because back then, the suppliers were basically importers, so they kind of went to China, and picked up a pen and said, "I like this pen, I'm going to buy it." But my dad, selling to the big guys and the big retailers, would launch collections. So very early on, I think the Mont Blanc style back then was the trend, and we created different colors with respect to, as opposed to selling only one black pen. We had black, and multiple other colors, and we created matching luggage tags and key rings and whatnot. So we started to create collections back then, which kind of really resonated with the end users, who didn't want to just buy one pen, but they wanted to buy a gift set. And then when they would buy a gift set, they buy a separate gift set. And I remember, I this was like 2005. We had this product development director who comes to my office one day and says, "I've been looking around the industry at the products that everyone's selling, and everyone's selling like black and dark colors, and no one really sells any other colors." I'm like, "Yeah, you're right." And she's like, "Would you be open if I wanted to create some new colors?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely, go for it." So I believe we were one of the first suppliers that launched pink and green and yellow and orange and purple and red. And we called this the Color Play Collection. And very early on, we became known as a supplier that has all kinds of different colors.
Mhm. So it sounds like how you're describing it, you led by product differentiation. You said, "What's
Yeah.
in the market? How do I get these promo distributors to want to work with me? Let me invent something new or focus on something that no one else is doing. That's beautiful. It's brilliant. Was there other ways that you went about it? Because obviously, there's many different ways of growth. There's like sales led, there's account management led, there's marketing.
Yeah.
So as you're developing these cool new product lines that differentiate, how did you handle the other part of the business?
Yeah. Great question. So, we started with that. And one of the things that, I became passionate about was understanding the essence of the CSR, customer service rep relationship, and the DSR, distributor sales rep relationship. I mean, that's really the foundation, or was the foundation of our industry. And obviously, back then, our repeat business was huge. It was like 50% repeat, especially with pen category. So I kind of recognized that service was important, great service. And I really took a perspective of, if something goes wrong, let's not fight about it. Let's just redo the order. And we started to do that very early on. And I remember this woman who worked for a large distributor went out on her own and gave us this fairly nice size keyring order. And the customer service manager comes to my office, and the order went wrong imprint. We looked at it. She had given us the wrong artwork. And I called this woman. My name was Cindy. And I say, "Hey, Cindy, I looked into the order. I know you gave us the wrong artwork. Don't worry about it. We'll redo the order. When do you need it? And where do you ship it? Where should I ship it?" And she starts crying. I'm like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "Rob, I can't thank you enough. It's like my third or fourth order. I don't have the money. I'm so thankful to you." And I'm like, it's like literally, she was like crying. I comes to birth from crying. And that's kind of the perspective that we took and still take is we don't care about the $400 order or the $4,000 order. We want to continue to build strong relationships. And it's funny because I used to tell my customer service team, I'm like, "I love when we screw up an order." And they're like, "Why? Are you crazy?" I'm like, "No, I love when we screw up an order." And I'm like, "You tell me why." And they're like, "Well, I guess it gives us an opportunity to build the relationship." I'm like, "Absolutely." Because I said to them, like, if you ship hundreds of orders or thousands of orders and nothing goes wrong, they're like, okay, their loyalty is there. But the loyalty is really tested when shit hits the fan. And there have been many times in our company history where we'd screw up, they screw up. I'm like, "No problem. We'll take care of it. We'll take care of you." And we actually make them look better. So, I mean, obviously we don't urge it, but when it happens, one of the first things out of my mouth was, "Don't be defensive. Let's figure out a solution."
First of all, that's a great attitude to take. As a distributor, it's so stressful when something goes wrong. Like for me, like a big order goes wrong, it's so stressful. Like you could do every single thing right, and then one small thing gets messed up, and everything before is feels like it's wasted. And I love
Yeah.
when my team kind of jumps in and saves an order and fixes it and gets somebody to place an order again that you never would have dreamed they would have come back. And that's kind of the beautifulness of our industry. It really kind of brings people together, and it allows our team to really overcome things. And some of the biggest mess ups we've ever done led to the biggest customers that have stayed with us and have spent the most money with us. So you're
Yeah.
very right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I recognize that sometimes the distributor sales rep relationship with the end user may not be as strong as a supplier distributor.
Yep.
So I know that, if a distributor screws up once, the end user may or may not have the patience to stick with him. Right. And so I never want to put that reputation at risk. And if I can control it, then I'm going to make him look as good as I possibly can. And we sent like gifts, like we would read the order and then we sent a gift to the distributor to send to the end user. We always took advantage of those challenges.
Amazing. From my own experience, um, failure or like ideas that I've had that haven't worked out usually spark something that ultimately does work out or sets me on a new path of like I cannot believe we've kind of landed here. But if you look back in hindsight, all the things kind of connect, and it usually leads from a moment of failure. How has failure played a role in your success?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is, going from 4 employees to 400. In the last 30 years, I've hired hundreds of people. And for me, and I think many business owners, we struggle with hiring the right talent, right? Having an interview or two or three, and then hiring someone and then training someone and then a year or two later or 6 months later. So I struggle with that with respect to hiring the right people. And when we moved from our multiple buildings into one large building in 2008, before my office used to be like in the middle of everything and everyone, it was a mess, and people were working in offices and closets and cupboards and whatever. And then we moved to this beautiful big building, and my office is in the corner. And I moved in, and it's a beautiful building, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on back there. Customer service was on the second floor, far away from me, and the factory was really far away, and I was really struggling with what's happening. I didn't understand the word corporate culture back then, but it was in my head. And I meet this guy who specialized in corporate culture, and he tells me he specializes in corporate culture. I'm like, yeah, I don't really know what that means. So he goes on to explain the spirit of the company and the beliefs and whatever. So we actually do a culture project. This was like the spring or summer of 2010. And he's like, I'm going to come in, I'm going to ask you 10 questions. Comes in, asks me the 10 questions, and I answer them to the best of my ability. And he closes up his stuff, and he's like, ready to leave. I'm like, where are you going? He's like, well, I'm going to take those 10 questions. I'm going to ask 15 of your employees randomly chosen. So we asked those questions, comes back to me that fall and says, Rob, I've been doing this for 25 years. I've never met a company where what you said was echoed by almost every other person, but in their own words. I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. I feel much better. And we created this culture book, right? And culture video. And so we delivers it, cute little book, cute little video. And I'm like, okay, this is amazing. But what am I going to do with it? And when the book was delivered, I was actually doing a presentation with a large distributor from the US in our showroom. And I'm like, hey guys, I just got this book. I just got this video. Are you interested in seeing our culture landscape video? And they're like, yeah, that would be awesome. So we show them, and they freak out and they love it. And I take that project and I create a team of what we call culture ambassadors, which are basically 4 people that really get the Spector culture, right? Exemplary employees have been with us for a long time, really get me, really get us. And we incorporated that into the interview process. So basically, if we're hiring a marketing manager, the VP of marketing will interview him or her, multiple times and whatever. That applicant has to meet a culture ambassador, and the culture ambassador is allowed to veto the hiring of that person.
Wow.
And it's worked fantastically. And what happens, we found, is that the applicant is meeting someone who's not really dressed up, middle management, they're not a VP, and they'll come in and kind of let their guards down and ask questions that they probably wouldn't have asked in the formal interviews. And the culture ambassador would really get a great feel for the applicant. And, I would say maybe 10 to 20% of the time they'd come back and either say, don't hire this person because X happened, or be very careful with this person because this is what we talked about during the interview. So,
By the way, I'm
that was,
gonna steal this idea, because I'll tell you from my perspective, I'm taking this culture idea because culture is such an important part of a business, and it can make or break a business, and you don't really talk about it. And in the early days, I know for me, I used to hire for the wrong thing. I hired based on resume, or someone had great credentials. And when they came into the company and their 5th, 6th, 7th employee, they weren't necessarily the right fit. They didn't necessarily want to roll up their sleeves and do everything that needs to be done.
yeah,
And there was a
yeah,
period of time where, honestly, the only reason why we survived is because we were growing so fast. Like, our growth allowed us to survive, but there was several people who were not the right fit for our company that we had to ultimately let go. And it really changed our perspective with everything. And this was like year 3 or 4 at this point, where we were start to get very diligent in who we actually hire. And that it wasn't just smart, because that's a given. They have to be smart. They have to, but that they really do feel like a great cohesive fit to the company, and that really allowed us to expand and grow so fast. And it allows people to be at our company for 9, 10 years, like the full existence of our company, and stay with us. But this culture idea of bringing people who are not maybe even meant to interview the person because they have nothing to
Yeah,
do with that person, but are
yeah.
just like judging them based on a different set of criteria, um, is a powerful idea.
I mean, I wish I came up with this a lot earlier because I've had lots of terrible hires, lots of great hires, but especially when you're a small organization and you're like 3 or 4 and you go to 5 and 6, to hire one rotten apple could literally ruin the culture of a company. And
Exactly.
I remember one Friday afternoon, this is like 2005, maybe 2006. I'm in with my 2 managers Friday afternoon, and I'm like, "Hey, how was your week?" It was like Friday, 5 p.m., and they're like, our week was really great." And I said, "Why?" And they both look at each other, and they say, "Oh, because the CSR wasn't there." I'm like, "Hold on a second. We were probably around 120 people at the time." I'm like, "Hold on a second. What are you talking about?" And like, "Well, this person was on vacation, and we had an amazing week because this person was on vacation." She was one of our best CSRs, by the way, at the time. And I'm like, "I don't understand." They're like, "Rob, she's really mean to people internally."
Wow.
And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" They're like, "Rob, we know she's great with the customers, but she's really mean. Like people will come in and they'll be overweight. She'd make fun of them." And I'm like, "Whoa,
Crazy.
whoa." And she was actually friends with my sister who was working at the time and best friends with my sister. They would always go for lunch. I'm like, "Are you telling me that this person not being in the office allowed you guys to have the best week ever?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, fire her Monday morning."
Yeah.
And they're like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Fire her Monday morning. I don't allow this stuff to happen in my company." Right. And they're like, "Rob, literally the customers love her and she goes out with your lunch with your sister every day." I'm like, "I don't care if she's my sister.
Yeah.
No, you need to fire her Monday morning. The minute she walks in, she's gone."
Wow, wow. It really changes, and I'm sure at that moment, things actually changed and people were happier, and they probably felt like, "Rob, our boss, is listening to us. He hears us. He's not just," because people are generally, I've been told this, not with me, I'm not a scary boss, but people have been told, "Jeremy, you're not like a normal boss like we've had in the past. Like, we love you, you hear us, you listen to us, there's no ego involved with it." And I can imagine them telling you that and then you making a decision so quickly, it probably made their day, it probably made their year, being realized, like, that you actually are valuing their opinion.
Yeah. It's funny because, I mean, I didn't know this then, but upon reflection, when you have someone that's a bad apple in your company and the CEO doesn't act, everyone else knows, right? So they're waiting for the CEO to set an example. And if the CEO doesn't set an example by making a change, they get disappointed, they lose confidence, they lose the culture. And, we're always the last to know, right? I bet you every single person in my office knew that this person was not cool. I had no idea. Customers would call me like, "I love her, but she's great." So, so for me, the hiring, the firing has been huge to make sure that, we have a great culture because as a supplier, every single person is or team is touching an order, right? So you're as a supplier, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And I would always tell this story, say, "Listen, a customer calls us, we have a great relationship with them for however many years, and they say, I need this order shipped, whatever, 24 hours, 48 hours, doesn't matter. We get the artwork done, we rush the artwork, we schedule it, we burn the screen, we put it in the factory, produce the order, and then a laborer goes on break and the UPS driver comes and sees the red flag or whatever and says, "Oh, I'm going to go on a smoke break." And UPS driver comes and goes and we lost that order, right? We shipped it late or whatever. So I realized that, as a supplier, every single team member contributes to your success.
Yeah, it's a machine. We never did our own printing. We used, obviously, Rob, you were one of our favorite suppliers that we used. And we were relying on a lot of other people like 3PLs and warehousing. And there's so many different organizations that touch an order From the moment our customer service rep speaks to a customer to the moment it actually gets delivered, it's touching hundreds of hands potentially.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you have
Big
to make
time.
sure that you're working with great partners. So I always was so fascinated by talking to you, Rob, and learning how the inner workings of a supplier, inner workings of a 3PL, because they're so complicated and they're so detailed, and it has to be perfect every step of the way. So, um,
Yeah.
now, Rob, I guess I just want to take it into the future. You've been in in the industry, you said, for 33 years. You've seen a lot of change. We're now at this new world. In the last 2 years, ChatGPT launched. All these different AI companies are launching. Um, there's tariffs, not to get too deep on it, but there's a lot of stuff that's happening that's really, I believe, going to affect the industry as a whole. Where do you see the promo industry in the next 5 years?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because our industry has been very much, a small industry, right? Working within its own, and it didn't really change much, So from 1991 to 2015, hardly any change. If I looked at my factory, we used the same machines for decades. The machine and equipment didn't change till digital equipment came on board and automation came on board. So, it was a very sleepy industry for decades till private equity in this industry looked at us and said, "Oh my God, look at this industry that's so broken up and segmented." And so it hasn't really changed, but definitely with AI, um, I think there's going to be huge transition, huge evolution in our industry, and I've seen that even in the last several years, where the strength of the personal relationships is at stake right now, right? So the personal relationships that were the foundation, the bedrock of our industry, have slowly but surely. I mean, they're still important, but the the knowledge of the CSR and DSR. They used to know each other's lives inside and births, deaths, divorces. Like I go my CSR, they would like know the entire life history of our top reps, right? And now it's not important. Now you don't have the time to build that up. It's how quickly can you process our order. So for me, I think digital engagement is going to be huge, and is huge. Promo Standards is doing a lot of great work with respect to being able to distributors send the orders, supplier welcome the orders, and no more data entry. So I think it's really going to be changed. I think AI, and I don't have the answers, but I definitely think our industry will be transitioning hugely. Technology is going to start to finally have a huge impact on our industry.
I'm excited for all of it. I'm uh I'm interested how it's all going to play out because there's so many different people that obviously I want everyone to thrive and grow. And I agree with you. Technology. Even when we started swag.com, we saw a shift of e-commerce. Um, I was always thinking, frankly, when I was starting the business, that we were going to replace all the all the smaller local promo distributors, and I was proven wrong. I found that there's always a buyer for different use cases. There's a buyer who doesn't want to talk to anybody, and they're the e-commerce buyer. Then there's a buyer who does want to speak to people, and I do believe we're both going to exist. And how we're going to exist, it's going to be kind of a fun ride to watch. But Rob, I want to thank you so much for time. I know we've had a lot of noise on my end, on your end. I'm we're dodging these the hammers, but we're gonna make it work. And thank you so much for taking the time, and love
My
hearing your
pleasure.
story.
My pleasure, Jeremy.